Say, Nikki, do you know how many people have signed up over there?
We have 4.
4, okay. Pardon? Okay. According to my computer, it is time.
You have to turn on your mics.
Oh. I knew that. According to my computer, it is time to start the meeting. I am calling this meeting to order at 7 o'clock. The planning commission for the city of Bandon. We'll need a roll call.
Happy to. Commissioner Orsi.
Here.
Commissioner Scobie.
Here.
Vice Chair Drukowski.
Here.
Chair Slothauer.
Here.
Commissioner Norman.
Here.
Commissioner Frey.
Here.
And it looks like Commissioner Starbuck isn't here unless he's on the Zoom.
I don't see him up there. I was just looking for him.
Thanks.
Let's see. Okay, did everybody read the minutes from the last meeting?
Yes.
Yes. Does anybody have any objections, corrections, additions?
No.
Then the minutes stand approved as written. Okay. Public comment. We are going to, anybody who wants to talk about something not on the agenda can make a public comment. You have 5 minutes. And please stop at 5 minutes. Sally here is gonna probably, I don't know.
Say your time is up.
How are you gonna do it?
Probably say your time is up.
Oh, you don't get to gag them or anything?
N-
Oh, man.
probably.
Okay. So is there anybody who has public comments that are not on the agenda? Items that are not on the agenda?
Oh, Neil Barlow.
Hello,
Hi, Neil.
Neil Barlow. I live in Bandon. I would like to thank and apologize particularly to Nikki, the planning department. When we were talking about the amusement arcade back when, I thought we were looking at being open for Labor Day. Unfortunately, an opportunity arose for us to be open for July 4th. This caused panic and chaos, particularly for the planning department. I'm trying to do the right things. I really am trying. But I really would like to thank that they've been really helpful, particularly Nikki, who in the absence of Dana was asking at least one question a day. Sure. And so I'd just like to thank everybody. And for those who don't know, we did actually test open last Friday. We are open. We don't have any signs yet. I am working on it. But I just wanted to thank everybody, the planning department I know they're busy and I was just making their lives even more difficult than necessary. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? Comments on something that is not on the agenda? Okay, so it is 7:02 and that went fast. And we are going to a public hearing. I now declare the public hearing open at 7:02 p.m. this 27th day of June, 2024. This is an official public hearing before the Planning Commission of the City of Bandon for planning application number 24-007, a conditional use permit to demolish and rebuild the Holy Trinity Catholic Church located at 355 Ogden Avenue Southeast, which is a property in the Controlled Development 1 CD1 zone in the city of Bandon. The applicable substantive criteria are contained in section 17.2 Controlled Development Zone, 16.12 Conditional Uses, 17.96 Off-Street Parking and Loading, and 16 .04.070 Type 3 procedures in the Bandon Municipal Code and the policies of the comprehensive plan. Please address your comments to these criteria or the criteria you believe apply to this decision. Official notice is hereby given that the Planning Commission can consider laws, ordinance, court decisions without having them established as evidence in the hearing record. A copy of the minutes of this hearing will be available at city offices. A copy of the rules and procedures I am reading will be available at city offices as part of the file. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to challenge whether it is proper for this planning commission to hold this hearing? No challenges, huh? Are there any commissioners present who wish to declare ex parte contact, site visit, feel they may have a conflict of interest, bias, or other reason to be disqualified from this participation in this hearing?
Two
I
site
visit today.
two site visits by myself.
Will it affect your judgment?
Not at all.
Okay, anybody else?
I,
Through the parking lot.
Yeah, I think we all did.
I attended a service there once, but it's not going to affect my decision.
Okay. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to challenge any of the commission members' qualifications to participate in this hearing? Whoa. What does the staff have to report for the record?
All right, thank you. I've got a presentation that I'm going to ask Nikki to put up. I'll just start by saying, so we've got, we did submit to you a staff report when your initial packet came out. This afternoon, we issued an addendum staff report. We did receive additional material from the applicant, which you have in front of you. So the presentation covers some of the material that was submitted a little bit later, but the applicant is also going to give a presentation. So likely if you have some questions about that newer material, it would be better directed towards the applicant. All right, so this is planning action 24-007, the Holy Trinity Church conditional use permit. If you could go to the next slide. They are requesting a conditional use permit to we said remodel, but that's probably a little bit disingenuous. They are going to demolish the existing church and then rebuild a new church in its place. The new church will be slightly larger, and our staff report also covers some changes to the off-street parking and loading. That chapter also addresses lighting, so we'll talk about those things in a little bit. If you could go to the next slide. So this property, I thought it was kind of funny when I cut the image of the zoning map. It's sort of surrounded by almost every other zone that we have. So this is a zoned controlled development one. We sometimes refer to this as one of our few mixed use zones. It does allow a variety of uses, usually residential outright, and then almost everything else is a conditional use. It does abut both C1, which is the Old Town Commercial, the sort of public facility, which is City Hall across Highway 101. I think it also touches C2, which is our general commercial. And then most importantly, it does abut residential zones. If you could go to the next slide. I think, and maybe someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure this is the original church and you can still see it if you juxtapose the pictures side by side. The church is over 100 years old. The application stated that it just has sort of reached the end of its useful life, and the church would like to build something larger to accommodate the uses. They did, in looking through the files, they did receive 2 previous conditional use permit approvals. So I should mention, because it was built 100 years ago, they didn't get a permit to build it. They didn't have zoning back then. So it is considered a legal non-conforming use. That just means that it can legally exist, but it probably doesn't conform to today's zoning code. The 2 previous conditional use permit approvals were for the rectory and the parish hall, which are other structures located on that site. Those do come into play a little bit when we talk about parking and other site design elements. Our code is sort of funny in that even if the building exists, as soon as you do what we call a major modification, so tearing down a building and rebuilding would be considered a major modification, you actually go through the whole conditional use process again. So it's not really just a a modification to the existing permit. It's a whole new permit. Okay, next slide. So as Bear mentioned, our approval criteria are primarily the conditional use chapter, the controlled development 1 chapter, and then the off-street parking and loading chapter. There's much more detail in the staff report. I'm just going to go over the 3 sort of most important items. So next slide. Lighting was the first one that we brought up. So the neighbors to this property did bring lighting, the issue of lighting to the city's attention a couple of years ago. New light poles were installed, which were creating some glare onto neighboring properties. Our code says that in parking lots of any sort of large use like this, lighting is a component, and any sort of artificial lighting has to be designed or sited in a way that it minimizes the impact to the neighbors. I believe the term is glare. You can't have any glare or light pollution going onto a neighboring property. Particularly, our code looks at residential properties. My recollection of the history here is that the light poles were installed. There was a complaint made. The church actually followed up and shielded those light poles to remove the light or tried to maybe lessen the light nuisance that had occurred. We have been working with the project applicant who submitted a photometric study originally, and it did show that some of the light was still going onto neighboring properties. So in their recent iteration that they just submitted, they've changed the lights to be sited in a way that there is no longer light glare going onto the adjacent properties, according to that photometric study. We did include a condition of approval to address lighting, and that is in your addendum staff report. That's the modified one. What we requested is that they submit a lighting plan before zoning compliance approval that shows the type, material, and location of all exterior light poles. If they had any proposals for cutoff or shielding, those sort of items that are going to prevent that glare, we would want to know about it. And also, we might suggest that you consider something like requiring the lights be turned off after a certain hour. And if there's a concern about not having lights on, if someone is there in the dark, you could have motion sensors to turn the lights on. So we understand that the lights are there to create safety for anyone using the parking lot. But they are also having an impact on the neighbors. We also requested that the exterior light poles have to be, located and shielded so as not to cause shine, glare, or light pollution falling onto any adjacent properties. And the way that we would figure that out or determine that is when the photometric plan shows 0, which was submitted this evening. The next item is, if you could go to the next slide, parking. So, tried to blow up their site plan as much as possible so that you could see all of the existing parking that's here. And again, because this is an existing and older use, some of the parking doesn't meet our current code requirement. We did speak with the applicant about the amount of parking spaces required for this use. So because there is a church, there is a parish hall, which is like a meeting room, and then the rectory, which would be most comparable to a single family dwelling. There's a number of uses happening on site. Our code allows for uses that are not going to occur at the same time to actually share in parking. And so what the applicant has provided to you this evening is a parking plan that has some overlap. So and then the church submitted a letter as well that includes a statement that the church itself and the meeting rooms aren't used at the same time. So those are 2 separate uses, so those parking counts can overlap. So they proposed having 39 parking spaces. In our condition of approval, we would require that those parking spaces meet the minimum standard of our code, which is 8.5 by 11. So any of the sort of non-conforming parking spaces can stay, but they have to have at least 39 that meet our requirement. The other thing to note on the top of the screen near Oregon Avenue is that there are 2 parking spaces that are currently located in the city's right-of-way. We've requested that those be removed. The reason for that removal request is we want to maintain any sort of fire access that's there. Ingress and egress of a fire truck is very important. So we've also sort of punted that to the zoning compliance that the fire department will sign off and make sure that there's sufficient room for fire trucks to go by. We didn't have the dimensions on this site plan to make that determination this evening, so we'll just move that to zoning compliance. And so that would be just referencing again the addendum staff report. That is condition of approval number 1. The other requirements that are in there are that those 39 parking spaces have to meet ADA accessibility requirements and any architectural graphic standards, which is required by our code. Okay, and then they'll, I'll go to the next slide. Just so you can see where those 2 parking spaces are in the driveway, it does sort of narrow up there with the parking spaces. We think that removing that will just get rid of any concern about a fire truck being able to get in and out. And finally, the last one is fencing. So our code requires that a fence be constructed on the perimeter around parking lots when the parking lot is adjacent to any residential property or residential zone. In this case, on the south property, south of the south property line that is also controlled development 1, which contains residential uses. So we've requested that a fence be constructed. My understanding of the requirement in our code is to prevent any, if someone's pulling into a parking space, that then those lights from a parked vehicle don't shine into any residential property. The code's very specific that it can't be less than 5 feet and no more than 6 feet. So somewhere in between there, they've got to have a fence on the south property line. Initially, we did recommend that the entirety of the property be fenced, but then we recognized after talking with the applicant that the east property line kind of dips down, so there's not the fence on that side isn't actually going to do anything to prevent parking lot light, cars, lights from shining into anything. And then on the west side, the site is elevated and there are I don't believe there's any parking spaces that shine into that street. So we amended that to only be on the south side. So the last screen or the last one just reiterates all of those conditions of approval. There was also one other condition of approval regarding a final drainage plan. An updated drainage plan was submitted today. However, it is our Public Works Director's birthday, so he was not here today to review it and provide comment. And so we've just asked that that be a condition of approval for zoning compliance. Please let me know if you have any questions.
So on the drainage, so you've already noted that this church has been here for 100 years. By my count, we've gotten somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 inches of rainfall so far this calendar year. As far as I know, there hasn't been any problems with drainage. Is that correct? Or has there been flooding I don't know about?
Well, that might be a better question for the applicant or the folks at the church because they would see it every day. As far as I am aware from talking with our Public Works Director, there haven't been flooding issues there. He did request that the drainage plan not directly discharge into the city's ditch, but their plan shows they have a sort of it's like a bioswale that will hold the water and then only overflow if we get a large scale event.
Do we know where it goes now? Where the drainage goes now?
That's a great question. I don't,
Okay.
but the applicant might. It's a good question for them.
I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
So with the new photometric plan that was submitted,
Mhm.
does the city feel that the lighting issue has been resolved?
I think we might not have enough information to know if it's resolved. So they did submit a photometric study that showed that the light pollution from the lights that they are installing or have installed will reach 0 but I don't have the details of what those lights will look like. So that's also something that we would like the applicant to submit so that we can confirm what sorts of materials or products they're using to ensure that there is no light pollution.
Okay.
So we have received a photometric study, but we might need a little more information before we can really say that it's not causing a problem.
And yeah, I'll have a similar question. Why are there 100-foot lights there, or whatever they are? I mean,
Stadium lights?
Yeah, why are the
Why are they
lights
so
so high?
tall? Is that in compliance with code, that height, or are we going to be changing the
It
height?
seems crazy.
That's a good question. Let me take a look here and see if I can remind myself how tall a light post can be in that zone. I may make a note of that and then come back to it after you've got
Okay.
some other feedback.
Okay,
I have a few more questions. I'm sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
So the city now is recommending 39 parking spaces. Is that based on square footage of the proposed church or the bench seating?
That is, so that I think the applicant could also expound on this a
Okay.
little bit more, but they used the square footage of the structure and then the amount of seats, bench seats that you could fit, or no, it was the occupancy of the building. That's what it is. And then how many butts you would essentially have in each seat, because you can have 4
Okay.
per bench, and then calculated the parking spaces that way based on the maximum occupancy of the building.
And how many people per car does that come to?
Well, that's where you get into the details that we can't really discuss, because our code just says it's 4 seats per bench. So that's, sorry, thank you. One space
space
for
per-
4
So they
seats.
assume that 4 people are coming in each car. That's,
Or that not everyone is going to be, not every seat is going to be taken.
And use the term ADA compliant with parking. Is that the size that the city requires, or is that ADA compliant like we see with certain parking spaces that are oversized?
That would be the latter. So they would have to provide a certain number of ADA accessible parking spaces.
But not all 39. would
That's
be.
correct. Yeah, not all 39.
Is that a city code or a state or a county code that requires a certain number of?
So the city code just requires that any parking lot be built with ADA standards.
Mhm.
The ADA standards themselves are, I believe, a federal law, but probably reviewed at the state level.
But
Could
who,
also be a question for the applicant.
but who determines how many full-size ADA compliant parking spaces are required?
I believe there's a standard. So for a certain number of parking spaces that you have, a certain number of them have to be ADA.
And that's
accessible.
once again a federal requirement.
I believe so. Those are
Not a-
standards that are normally reviewed by our city engineer for compliance. Yeah.
And on the fencing issue, I understood you to say the city is not going to require fencing on the, what would be the west side of the property because it sits up higher than Oregon?
Well,
Or there's
That-
no
that's
parking
just a
there?
staff recommendation. You make the decision on behalf of the city, so you are welcome to have that be a condition of approval. Our recommendation was not to have one on the west side, because it wouldn't prevent, I think, what it's trying to accomplish, which is parking lot or parked vehicle lights shining into a residential property.
And there's no parking on the west side? Because I think most of the complaints that I saw were multiple complaints from a neighbor on the west side. So then we get back to the lighting issue.
That's correct. So if you look at the site plan that's provided, the only parked cars that could potentially shine in that western direction are the 2 parking spaces in the city's right of way that we're asking them to remove. The other parking spaces that are facing that direction, the church would block them.
Okay.
And then the other parking spaces have some trees or are facing a different direction. So there's no other parking spaces oriented towards the west.
But you still have, when churches, well, if a night function is out, you still have a lot of cars going out the exit driveway, right? Which, does that shine onto other houses? You know, Oregon Avenue is pretty narrow. It's a pretty narrow little street.
Well, that part,
It would
I don't know
affect
if you're gonna be able to avoid that.
Okay.
And the other side overlooks the parking lot for the hotel.
That's correct. Yes.
Sorry, Bill.
But no, it's fine.
okay,
I have a question on the numbers.
Yeah.
On the document we got today, it says the compliance spaces are 43
Yeah.
and the non-compliant 16. Is
Yes.
that the number or is 39 the number?
So 39 would be the number of parking spaces that they would need to meet the standards of our code. They actually provide 43 total compliant spaces. So that would sort of check that box of the 39. And then there's 16 that don't meet that. We wouldn't ask them to get rid of those because I think you might feel that more parking is better, but they don't meet the standard of our code.
anybody else?
So I will
Okay.
get back to you on the height of the light poles.
Yeah, I'm kind of interested in that one. This hearing is to be orderly and courteous. When it is your turn to testify, please speak clearly, state State your name for the minutes, clerk. It is recommended that all testimony be submitted in writing for the record. Please print your name and mailing address on the sign-in sheet that is located on the podium. I believe most of you have already signed in over there. The applicant will be granted 20 minutes. Testimony from other people will be limited to 3 minutes per person. After all testimony is taken, the applicant will be given 10 minutes for rebuttal testimony. And then we will close the hearing. And, oops, excuse me. All right, failure to raise an issue with sufficient specificity to afford this decision-making body and the parties involved an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes an appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Do the applicants or their representatives wish to make a statement at this point?
Kick that in, that'd be great. My name is Joe Slack. I'm an architect out of Coos Bay with a firm called HGE, and happy to be here. Happy to present the project that we've been working on for the church for quite some time now, and it's a big milestone to be here. So we appreciate your time, appreciate the efforts that the city's had. So I'll go through. I've got a handful of slides that maybe explain the project, and you guys had some great questions. Hopefully I'll be able to address them with the information I've got here tonight. So, yeah. So here's an aerial photo of the site, and the yellow is roughly the footprint of the new building, and what's underneath it is the existing church. We're really, the site impact that we have is pretty minimal. We're not disrupting anything really, if you can believe that, with the site work. Parking's all remaining as it is now. The lighting that has been there, I'll address that here in a minute. We're not monkeying with that too much. We are making some adjustments though. And as well as the parking, if you've been up there, you've noticed the church does a really great job with their grounds. I mean, they take a lot of pride in their property, and they've just recently seal coated and striped. And so, and I was up there measuring just earlier today, and they've got a lot of compliant parking spaces. So I'll get into that in a minute. Go ahead. So this is the existing survey. This was done a couple years ago. It was actually done before the new striping, but it basically is, in essence, how it sits right now. Next slide. And so here's our, like Dana mentioned, this is the proposed site plan. We've done a flip on the building where some of you that have been to the church there come into the building on the north side, and we're doing a flip. You come into the building on the south side, and that one of the driving forces was to get the front door a little closer to the center of their parking, make it a little easier to get into the building. Next slide. So I got to, I'm an architect, so I got to show you the stuff with the building. We submitted building drawings, so I'll quickly go through it. But the staff picked up on the foot or the square footage of the building. We kind of had some discrepancies. We submitted these drawings in January. So since that time, here it is, almost July. We've been working through the detailed construction drawings because we're getting ready to go out to bid. And so some things have been fine-tuned. We've also, as you know, construction costs is pretty strong these days. And so we've been, the church has been adjusting and tweaking. So right now the square footage, I think it's cut off with the tablet up there, but the square footage is 4,998 square feet. So it's, 4,898. It's just under 4,900 square feet. So that's where we sit right today. And the thing that makes the building bigger than previous is because we have more generous seating with the pews. The seating count increases by about 20 or 25 seats. So it's not just, we're not doubling the size of the church or anything, but we are making it much more accommodating. And it does have a chapel component for daily services where they don't need to fire up the lighting and the mechanical for the main church, and the chapel's off to the left there. So they can have services during the week without using the entire facility. And then we have you already mentioned ADA. We have ADA compliant restrooms. We have restrooms that aren't right off the the nave, if you will, so people don't know you're using the restroom. So those kind of things make it a little more discreet. And there's a cry room, and whatnot. So the typical support spaces, yeah. Next slide, please. So the exterior of the building, we've used a lot of components that the church has now, but we are introducing some other elements. We're creating some plenty of natural daylight into the space, and we have an entry. The entry is the orangey, dark orangey color. Those are a pair of doors right there that, and the entry is marked by a bell tower. There isn't actually a bell there, but it's reminiscent of a bell tower with some natural daylight coming in the top and with a steeple with a cross on the top. The rendering on the upper right, that's facing south. We have this nice large Gothic window, and that's the chapel space. And then the rendering on down below is faces east. Yeah. And this is the north. The upper rendering is the north side. You can see the church from down Old Town, and you'll be able to see this gable end view of the building. And we have this nice rosette round window up there that you'll be able to view from down below. Next slide. The interior, the photos on the left represent some images that we've been using during design. The bottom photo, that's how it is inside the church now. And so the large photo is a rendering of the interior, which brings some of those architectural elements into the new facility. Yeah. And this is a rendering. I think you all have this rendering as well. That's if you're standing at the parish hall looking northwest towards the entry, kind of away from Oregon Street. It's from the opposite side. Go ahead. And there's some materials that we'll have. We have some, we hope to implement some veneer stone, some natural stone veneer, as well as some pretty standard common hardy panel type shingle siding. Go ahead. So you were talking about parking, and so there's 63 spaces there right now, if you were to count them all, and 1.5 are hanging over the property line. So really, there's 61 spaces that are on site, and so that's what we have now. And we're not pinching that center parking area. We're just coming about where the edge of the building is now. So we're not really crowding that at all. But in terms of the parking requirements, there's 3 buildings on site, so we got to churn through all 3 of them. So for the church, the new church, it's 1 space for every 8 feet of pew and 1 space for every 4 seats. And that gives us about 32 spaces required for the church. The parish hall, we had to use a couple different formulas, but if you've been in there, there's a meeting space, fellowship hall, if you will, that's about 1,200 or a little less than 1,200 square feet. And so going to the code to determine what the occupant load is, that space, using 1 person for 15 square feet, we end up with 77 occupants, and we need 1 space for every 4 occupants. So we need 19 spaces for that meeting room component. And the rest of the building is office space, and it's pretty cut and dry in your code. That equaled about 6 spaces. And then we have the rectory, which is single family residence, and that requires 2. So we end up total required spaces. Our math was 59, less this issue that the parish hall is not used at the same time as the church. So I didn't do all the spaces in the parish hall. I just counted the meeting room space, and I came up with a 39. So that's how we kind of conservatively came up with a quantity that we needed to have in order to be compliant with your code. And so roughly, I think we're around 43 that meet the, 8.5 by 19. But then I saw there's a couple more, so we may be pushing 45 or 48 or so compliant parking spaces. We're not going to take out the rest of them. The parking spaces work just fine for the church right now. We're going to leave them and they can use them, but we'll demonstrate to the city that we have at least 39, probably more like mid 40s of compliant parking spaces. So I hope that answers your questions, but that's how the math was that we worked through. And you guys feel free to ask me questions. I'm gonna jump to lighting.
Just a quick question before we move on. Are there any parking issues currently at the church?
Well,
Is there overflow that goes onto the streets or that you're aware of?
folks, this is Father Anthony. He's with the church and obviously, and he can answer questions as well, but they haven't directed me about any overflow. They haven't said, Joe, we need more parking. I haven't heard that.
Okay,
It's mostly funerals and weddings,
Mm.
the big events. That's where it's, not the day to day. So, and Dana pointed out, we're not trying to, have enough parking for a Super Bowl. I mean, I don't mean to be facetious, but we're trying to design for a typical use.
right. Thank you.
So for a big event, where does the excess parking go? You just park in the neighborhood to
I
the,
think they fill the parking lot.
and so the parking lots.
And day to day, it's maybe half, a third. Yeah. That help?
And so, sorry, not to drive this point
Yeah.
too far, but so, number of parishioners currently? Official?
Would you go ahead?
Well, hello everyone, Father Anthony here, and number of parishioners, we have about 160 in our books.
Okay.
But as you know, what you have in your books is different from attendance weekly. At attendance weekly, we're at about, combining all the services that we normally have Saturday and Sunday when we have the largest crowd, we have about 120.
And so, thank you for that information. So, how many services are there on Sunday?
One.
One?
Put your mic down.
And then other events during the course of the week? I mean, do you have like Sunday school and?
Yeah, all the events on Sunday happen after
Okay.
Mass on Sunday.
And
So that's why we use the hall afterwards, but during Mass, nothing happens in the hall.
Okay, and Monday through Saturday, are there typically regular events?
Correct, all weekday masses. And those are mostly in the chapel, which is a small space that holds about, 15 people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
20 minutes, I better keep moving. I don't know if anybody's doing the time clock. Are you guys, yeah, see? Any more parking questions? Okay, yeah, next slide. Okay, so let's talk about lighting. So we've been working hard, like Dana said, to become compliant. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 poles that were added 2 or 3 years ago. And there's an existing, also on top of that, there's a city power pole, if you will, right dead center in the middle of the site that has a light on it as well that the city has. And then there's 2 ornamental, I call them globe lights, that are on the property as well. The 2 globe lights need to be moved because they're in the way of our addition. So that's kind of what we have now. And we tracked down the specifications on the lights on the poles, and the poles are about 18 feet. When you add the concrete plinth they're on, they're about 20 feet. Somebody said 100 feet. I'm not sure where that came from.
Oh, I was being facetious.
Okay.
They look really tall.
Tit for tat, I get it.
They do look like stadium lights, however.
Yeah, well, I've been reading that too, and actually we do field lighting, so I know it's not stadium lighting, but that's okay. So we got the spec sheet from the electrician that did those lights, and we ran some photometrics. The problem was, from an engineering standpoint, we didn't have any spec data on the shielding that was added. That apparently was okay, but so we couldn't really confirm what the foot candles were at those locations off the property. So we kind of went back to the drawing board, if you will, and then we're I don't have a pointer, do I? We're changing. Yeah. So the south light and the north light, way at the top of the screen, we're going to change those heads out to a cutoff head, if you will, that prevents, obstructs the lighting from leaving where you don't want it to be. And so we're gonna modify those two. And then where the, where this is the power pole the city has with a light on it. That's gonna go away. And then, again, this will get remodeled, that one will get remodeled, this will stay, and this interior one right here stays. And so with that, with the photometrics, there's no bleed on. And so we submitted that just this next slide.
I have a question.
Yeah.
There's a light, well, near my house that they told me, well, this is a light that's designed to shoot straight down. Well, it floods my entire backyard and I hate it. And, so you.
So let me
They
keep
give
going.
you specs.
She's gonna cut me off here. So let me finish
About
up.
5 more minutes.
Yeah, see, okay, so here's photometrics. And if you zero in on those, it's 0 all the way around the whole perimeter of the property. Okay, no lighting is leaving the site. Okay,
That's currently,
that's current. That's what the city has in their office today.
including the light on the west. We'll give you more, I think we
Yes.
can allow a little more time, can't we, since.
Oh,
we're
absolutely. We're interrupting it.
Yeah,
Yes.
I just want to clarify though, you're saying currently like what's on site now or
Yeah.
what has been submitted?
What, right, that's my question, because isn't it the west light that the neighbor across the street is?
South, go back.
So is the
Right.
photometric survey gonna be based on the new lighting, not
So-
what's existing now?
Calling this the west light,
Yes, I believe that's the one,
it's 0 now.
because isn't that the one the neighbor had numerous complaints?
guess it's the one way up.
Is it the one up there?
Okay.
Thank you.
We're doing good. Okay, next slide. So again, the city has this, it demonstrates a 0, but I need to kind of I need to confirm what we're doing. How did we get there? So next slide. So the light, these are lights that have the type of light that we're gonna modify and put these kind on. I don't know now, you can see how far away they are. And they're, like I said, they're a low cutoff. Next slide. And this is the spec on it. You can see they're totally shielded on the top and on the sides. Next slide. So this demonstrates lighting today, it's amazing how the LED lighting world is. I mean, it's phenomenal, the type of lighting and the type of controls that we get today. So that light on the left is kind of a typical site light that you would find in a parking lot. The light on the on the right, which is what we're going to be using on those edges, you see that sharp line? That line is happening on our side of the property line. And so that's how we come up with the 0 on the off the property line. So those are the lights that we're planning on submitting, and the photometric site plan plugs those in there. So, and that slide I showed you of the cut sheet is what the basis of design will be for those lights. So I hope that kind of helps comprehend.
So, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
were you involved in the creation of the north and south lighting?
No,
Okay, so one of those things that struck me as I cruised through the parking lot is you've got these you noted, two light poles that have, I don't know, somewhere in the vicinity of 4 or 5
those
globes.
globes.
And those look like they've been there for some time. I could be wrong, but they look like they've been, I'm curious what possessed you to make these really tall poles on the north and south boundaries. It seems like it was, it almost seemed like it was asking for trouble on some level, you know what I mean? I appreciate the solution you're attempting. What I'm not hearing is that the poles are going to be shorter.
You know, we want to have a safe and secure parking lot. You know, people using the facility at night, avoid people tripping and falling. I mean, just what you see with buildings that are accessed by the public. And so when you do those globe lights, they don't throw enough light out to do any good. And so 18-foot is kind of a typical, 24 is a typical light for parking lot. Now you can run bollard lighting where they're this high. They just don't throw enough light out to be safe for pedestrians walking through parking lots. So that's where we're at. The globe, and I didn't mention that with the globe lighting or the south light. Go back to the site plan. The light on the south edge, yeah, right there, that thing's practically on the property line. And we ran the photometrics, leaving it where it was, still changing out the head. And what happened was we got 0 foot candles, but it was probably maybe BU off the property line. So we really couldn't in good faith say that it was 0 at the property line. So we're actually moving that light pole about 7 or 8 feet north. There's a little triangular no parking place that we're gonna move that pole just to make sure that we don't have any bleed out from the property line. So, and then also go back one more. Those globe lights, I didn't really want to throw them away. So instead of having them out here, we're putting them right here and here. But in talking with the father earlier today, I think they are. So whether they end up on this site plan or whether they go away, they're gone. So in terms of impacting on anybody, any neighbors, so.
Okay, 20 minutes are up. If you need a little more time, go ahead and wrap her up.
I think I have like 1 or 2 more slides.
Go ahead.
Okay, so this is our drainage plan and we submitted, like I said, we've been working on this for a while and this was in a smaller scale was sent to the city, but the yellow line represents our rain drain piping that's picking up all the downspouts. And those are all being collected and they're outfalling into that big, long blue circle thing, whatever that is.
Is that the ditch, Dana, that you were referring to?
Yeah,
Conveyance swale is what it
yeah,
says.
yeah.
on it.
And that's on our property. And then there's an outfall at this little square at the very top. That's a little bit above the bottom of the swale. And then when it gets overburdened, it would go down into the swale that's in the city right away. So that's our strategy. I just don't think it would comprehend it on the drainage plan that we send into the city. So, and it hadn't been firmed up yet. We're still working through the invert elevations and the depth and all that stuff. So, I think I did it. Yeah, so, thanks for your time. Right now, we're wrapping up our construction drawings and our specifications. We hope to make it through tonight. And then we'll be submitting for getting our zoning compliance from the city and then headed in towards a building permit. While that's happening, we plan on going out to bid and getting a contractor on board. And we'd like to get out of the ground, we'd like to get out of the ground before winter. We redid our soils report. We kind of have a handle on what we need to do in that regard. And so we're ready to go. So we look forward for a favorable approval.
So what's the contingency plan upon the main church building being leveled? I assume there's going to be ongoing service. You're not going to be out of commission for a year, right? So where are the services going to be held?
In the parish hall,
In the parish?
Yeah.
And that's larger,
1,500 square foot or 1,400 square foot meeting room.
so it could be a little cramped, but otherwise that's what you're going to
Absolutely.
do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm sorry, I just had one quick question.
Yeah.
Is the church, and this doesn't have really anything to do with your project, but is the church 100 years old or 140 years old? Because I saw something that said 140. I can't read that, I'm sorry.
The church might be able to tell you, but it says since 1883.
83, okay.
Yeah, so
So it's
not this particular church.
but any
no.
church on the site. Okay.
There was a church, okay, there was a church before the fire and then it burned down and then the church that is there now was rebuilt after the fire, but in the same location?
One of the
Yeah.
fires,
One of the,
Oh, gosh,
one of the fires.
we need a historian
one
here.
of the many
Okay,
fires.
thank you.
So you're vulnerable for
36.
more questions as long as you're standing there. Sorry.
Fire
But-
away.
So,
I'll stay here all night.
so even though this church doesn't apparently qualify as an historical building,
Hmm.
are you gonna save anything? I mean, is there any, are you gonna save as much stuff as possible, windows or doors? I don't know. But I mean, just stuff, not memorabilia, but just to say this is what we used to have there.
Mostly furnishings and equipment.
Okay.
Altar, crucifix, maybe few pews. I could have Father answer that.
Well, actually,
He's got plenty of time. He's got.
okay,
Well, thank you for that question. And the answer is yes. There are a few things from the existing church that will go into the new church. And if you've been into our church, one of the remarkable things about the space is the altar itself from 1883, the altar stone is still in the church. All the altars we've used since the existence of the church. And I think that's remarkable, and we'll carry on with that tradition.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
right now let's,
We don't have time for you. You ran out of
well,
time.
I'm sorry.
And Bear, before you start, I'll just hop in because you asked me the question about the light pole. So the city standard, there's no particular standard around light poles in parking lots when it's not a commercial, when the commercial design standards don't apply. So in consulting with Shayla, I think that the light poles just can't exceed 28 feet, which is the maximum height in that zone. The zone does allow for a church to go up to 50 feet, but that's specific to the actual structure, the building itself, not any sort of accessory thing. So I'll just tell you that they can go up to 28 feet. It is, the planning commission does have the ability to impose standards, setting standards or limiting any sort of location or intensity of outdoor light. So it sounds like you could also modify that if you wanted to. Thanks.
Thank you, Dana. Okay, I knew I was right. Oh, are there any members of the audience who wish to speak on this issue? Nikki will call you.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
My name is Jennifer Worsing. I reside at 395 Oregon Avenue Southeast. I have reviewed the application and I'm not against the church building a new facility. The exception I take is that on November 2021, they installed stadium-style lighting in their parking lot. While today they are being a good neighbor and they're not turning on the lights next to my home. That could change at any given time. The church attempted to take steps to mitigate the lights by retrofitting them with shields. However, it does not solve the fact that they are stadium-style lights and not appropriate for areas adjacent to residences. Even with the shields, they are still visible from the Coquille River Bridge and still casting light onto adjacent properties. In April 2023, the church turned on all the lights for the then city manager, Dan Chandler. And even with the shields, they witnessed light being cast onto my property. In fact, the city manager sent an email to myself and 2 other neighbors where he stated that determining if the glare of the lights is excessive is a judgment call. And in his words, quote, "A judgment call I would rather not have to make," end quote. He went on further to instruct neighbors to not contact his staff on this issue anymore. I feel that lighting of the church parking lot should have been addressed through some sort of land use process, even after the fact, when the neighbors brought this to staff's attention 2.5 years ago. The church's current land use application has language about not wanting to impact the surrounding areas. However, the installation of stadium lighting has impacted the area adversely. It is my understanding that a major function of a conditional use process is to ensure the proposed improvement is not adversely impacting adjacent properties. Installing lighting for a parking lot is a significant change to property and should be addressed in this land use permit application. I did not know that they submitted additional information when I wrote this. While the church may and should be able to light their parking lot, it should not be done so at the cost of creating a nuisance to adjacent neighbors. My neighbors and I tried to go through the normal channels and work with the church and city staff. However, it was a long and frustrating process, nor was the city manager willing to enforce the code on the church. I contend the existing application was incomplete because it did not address the stadium lighting. Please defer this decision to the next meeting so the neighbors and the public have an opportunity to review this new information that was just submitted a few hours ago. I want my neighbors to maintain their property, including the church. I really like the building. I'm also not saying they shouldn't be allowed to light that parking lot, but they should do so in a manner that doesn't affect the neighbors' livability. And those tall stadium lights affect our livability, and they don't need to be that tall. Thank you.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Just your residence is due south of the property line?
Immediately south, yeah, I'm on the corner of Oregon and I guess adjacent to the church.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else have questions for Jennifer? Okay, next.
Hello, Mr. Chair and Planning Commission, staff, council. John Huddle, Sixes, Oregon. And I've attended church there a few times and I haven't seen any problems with the parking. I support the application for the reasons in the submission by the applicant. And you know, there's been some description of the lighting, 100-foot tall stadium lighting. I think, you know, just for the record, that's not technically accurate. So, but I think it's also been resolved by the new submittals. So unless there's any questions, I don't have anything further. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next.
Hello, City Council people.
Hello.
This is the first time I've ever spoken at a city council. Hello, Dana. I live directly across the street from the church. And I remember the stadium lights, 4 stadium lights went up, assembled and put up in November 2021. That's 6 months after I moved here. And so when I saw that happen, I was pretty upset because I know what was coming. I knew there was going to be a flood of lights, and indeed there was a flood of lights going not onto my driveway, but into my house. And so I started writing letters to the city council. I appreciate Dana responding to me and Richard Taylor coming out and trying to resolve some things with the church, but it didn't happen. So in my estimation, in my humble opinion, those 4 stadium lights affected me greatly. They beamed light onto, not onto my property, but into my house. Whereas at night, when the lights go on, and they go on before any city lights go on, and they stay on late into the morning, I close my shutters so the light doesn't come into my house. I have now 4 screens over my bedroom wall that faces the church, and it's not the moon rising in the east. It's the church lights. So in my estimation also, they're too tall. They're like TV screens up in the sky. So you have 18-foot poles, and then they're on concrete pillars. So they stick way up above the tree lines of the Bandon and Even. So when I look to the east, I see no more stars in the sky, which I used to love to do. I thought in a small coastal town like Bandon, you would appreciate the night sky. But as I look toward the east, I can't see anything anymore because there's so many lights on. That's all I want to say. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. I work at home full-time for the federal government, so that is my home office too. So I see everything that's going on in the church. Nothing escapes me. I see everything. So there you have it.
Any questions?
Yes, did you, you said that all 4 stadium lights impact your home, is that?
The one that's on the closest to my driveway.
I'm sorry, which one would that be?
Let's
Is
go
that the
back.
north one or
It's the north one.
the one that's on the?
Yeah,
north? That
I see
impact-
that every night. I try to avoid looking at it because your eyes are drawn to light, no matter what you do. We're human people, so we're drawn to light.
So is it so it's the north light primary, but are you?
Well,
So-
what's happened recently, well, I don't know how recent, maybe it was last year. The massive Monterey pine tree that was covering another light in the back, they cut half of that off, and that flood of light came onto my property. So now that light shines onto my property too. Now the globe lights, the lights were getting pretty dim. In fact, at one time, there was only one globe bulb that was going on, but now in the last few months, all the lights were replaced. So all those lights come onto my property. So there's a lot of lights on the church right now. There's nobody there during the night. I would say after 8, 9 PM, there's nobody in the parking lot. But the lights are on all night long.
And so I'm sorry, I keep hammering on this one point. It's the north light
Yes, sir.
predominantly, but you're also concerned about the south light and the globe lights? Is that
Correct, correct.
They also impact you.
Yeah. Behind the church, I don't see those lights.
Mhm.
But since they cut down half of the Monterey pine tree, completely in half, that light, the huge amber light comes my way too.
Thank you.
So
Do you have, I don't expect you to be a lighting expert, but I mean, do you have some sort of solution to this? How they can,
say that again, please.
do you have some sort of solution in your mind? You've got all this light happening. They need to illuminate the parking lot. Is there some way you can both be winners here?
I would disassemble the tall stadium lights to a much lower location, not so projected up in the sky above roof lines, because that's what you look at when you see the light. You see the stadium light. It's like a TV. It's like watching TV up in the sky. That's what it's like. So that they can lower the poles down to reasonable height, because a lot of the light is thrown into the sky, not onto the parking lot, because the light is so high up, it's filtering light in the sky, and then it hits the ground. You see what I mean? If you had a lower pole, it would just hit the ground where the cars are, where the people are walking. But here you have light filtering in the sky itself.
I believe though, you stated at some point that the globe lights were also, which are lower,
They're lower, but
they're still illuminating your house.
Yeah, when I first moved in, like I say, they were all lit up. And recently, the bulbs have been replaced, and they're so bright, so they throw a lot of light, even those, okay, so. I used to write a lot of emails to the city council. I think probably dozens and dozens from that time period, and nothing was happening. And I finally gave up about a year ago. But since this has happened, and I got a letter from the city council about this meeting, I decided about 3 hours ago that I was going to address it in some way or fashion. So this
Just so you know, we're not the city council, we're the planning commission.
planning department. Sorry.
Well, actually, the planning commission.
Planning
You know,
commission,
you're
okay,
planning-
great.
Yeah, just so you know,
Gotcha.
we're not. the
All right.
city
Right. If
council.
you don't like our decision, you can appeal to the city council, you see.
All right, thank you so much.
Anybody else have a question?
And by the way, my house is for sale.
Thank
I
you.
just listed it. Okay.
Thank you.
Next.
My name's Kevin Kent. My grandfather moved to this area in 26. My father, Paul Kent, operated a cranberry farm out off of Prosper Road. I had the pleasure of attending class in this room. Our high school burned down. In the time that I've lived here, gone through a couple of tidal waves. And it's amazing when a community comes together and they need to be able to provide housing, schoolrooms from whatever natural disaster occurs. You have a very daunting job in being able to manage the growth here in Bandon. People have concerns about various things. But please don't ever forget that we, the people here, in a time of crisis, can use a building that is being proposed for other services other than just church services. And each building that we have available for the members of this community is critical. I've lived through it. Many people have lived through it that have lived in this town. And that's one of the things that brings this community to such a unique event and brings people here that want to live here. So I appreciate all the rules and the regulations and the effort to provide a building that's sustainable and blends in with the rest of the community. But in doing so, please remember us. Because this building was not built as a high school, but it was used as such. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anybody else wish to speak? Yes, sir.
Tom Stallman. I've been a parishioner there at that church for 60 years, so I got a little bit of background of what was there, what was not there. See, we're talking about lighting. Now, they mentioned the globe lights. Now, we actually had another 4 of those globe lights that used to be there. It was one down on the south side or north side of the driveway, down low by the flagpole. There was another one up kind of where the wood carvings are up there, and then there was one on the driveway. So we ended up removing those globe lights because they kind of failed and whatnot. And those globe lights, they're it's something about yay high. They're not super high, and and I just have to say, we're not going to necessarily make everybody happy, with these decisions, because if I don't like a light this tall, we're going to have to make it 4 feet tall. I don't know how we solve that problem. It's very important to have security around the church. There's a lot of people will come to the church looking for food or handout. A lot of vagrants will come in the area, and we have some woods over on the south side, and people will kind of get behind, they'll kind of sleep around there and whatnot. So it's important to have security around the church, and particularly at night. And so anyway, I just want to give you a little history. And there was actually over by the rectory, which is where the house is, there was another pole light there at one point in time. So once we put these other lights in, we took that down. So we've removed a lot of lights. We didn't add a whole bunch of lights. We just replaced what was there. They're not the same, yes, they are taller lights. And I worked very hard to get the shields on it. I came back many times, adjusting those lights down and doing everything we could to make the neighbors happy, but it just wasn't achievable. If we had no lights at all, that's what they'd like.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Sir.
Well, first of all, I would like to thank everyone here, really, being here for the good of the city, the commissioners who are here doing your very best, working to take care of Bandon. And it means a lot. Many of us may not know that the church we're talking about is actually the second oldest church along Oregon coast. After Astoria, Bandon was the second in 1883. And when I came to Bandon and I learned a little bit of history about the church, the original one burnt down in 36 in the fire. And it took 3 to 4 months for folks in Bandon, parishioners at Holy Trinity, to construct the current church that we have. 3 to 4 months. And many of them were impacted by the fire also at the time. So even before their homes were built or rebuilt, they came together because of the impact of the church in their lives. And I share this because in every community, it's always good to recognize the effort of the members of the community. And the folks who did that in 36, they were Bandonites, if you may. And today, they passed on a light to us. And our whole effort is to continue to pass on that light to future generations. I'm the priest of the parish. I can't tell you how many families who have been impacted by our church, how many funerals, and some of them you've attended, how many folks who, in times of need, they come to a place that supports and helps them. And I know it's not just our church, even other churches here in Bandon. But it's just to show you that some of the institutions that we have in this community, they go a long way to make a difference in the life of the people here in Bandon. When we started this project, it was daunting to say the least, because you think about the size of the community and the price of things, the cost of things today, we begin to wonder, are we going to be able to continue, providing so many spiritual benefits for folks here in Bandon, whether you're Catholic or not, it doesn't matter to us. And today, I am so proud. I am so proud of the people in Bandon, my parishioners who came together and said, we can do this. Let's move ahead. And that's where we are, and I think is a blessing for this community. We have many folks who come to the church for different reasons. I live there, and I've had folks who are not, those passing through, those who are houseless. I've had folks knock at my door, 11 p.m., 1 a.m. at night. And it's understandable. And that's why we're there. That's one of the reasons why we're there, to be able to care for folks. And at the same time, we also have families with young children. We have the elderly. The reason why we began, where we redid the light, one of our parishioners, she was 94 years old, came to Mass in the winter time. And she fell at the parking lot and hurt herself badly. We were lucky we were liable for that. And recently also, early this year, the same thing happened on the south side of the property. And so we looked at what was existing. Is it providing safety for everyone who comes to the space? And that was the genesis of the lighting. And we've done so many things working with the city to do our best to ensure that it doesn't impact the neighbors. But above all, I can tell you that we are so proud of where we are today, and we'll continue to do our best truly to provide spiritual support and growth for everyone here in Bandon through this project. We've had music concerts and other events for the community. We're not closed up to the community, we are open. And like one person said, we're always there for any need of the Bandon community, for our spiritual growth as people of faith, but also for the benefit of this wonderful community. And I'm so proud of all my parishioners who have sacrificed. And I tell you, I know all my parishioners. I know so many of them very well. So many went above and beyond to sacrifice to ensure that we continue to make good impact here in Bandon. So I thank you once again for your time, for considering this project, even with other questions, right? Is important, but I appreciate your time and your efforts. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And the applicant, you need to speak to? Sign in. No, sign in down over there.
You can speak first and then fill it out after.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. You don't have to hold it up.
And I will sign it.
But if you don't mind stating your name for the record.
Yes. Good evening. My name is Matt Whitty. I reside at 395 Oregon Avenue. It's the house that's immediately south of the parking lot. I'm really pleased with what I've heard tonight, and I wanted to thank the Planning Commission, staff, and Joe for addressing the lighting issue, which has been a very serious issue for us. And so I just wanted to say thank you, and also that I believe that there can be a solution that is found that will make everyone happy. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
The any other audience members who wish to speak? Okay, the applicant there.
There's one.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see your hand there. Okay,
And just please, if you say your name for the record when you're done, if you don't mind signing in. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Richard Kimball Graves. I live in 11th Street. I'd like to say I've been a member of this church for 4 years. I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and we have the most meetings of any place in this town at Holy Trinity Catholic Church, 8 per week. Helps a lot of alcoholics and drug addicts like me. I'd also like to say that we also run the Knights of Columbus out of that church, which is to help parks and people throughout this community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you. Would you go sign in, please? Thank you.
More.
One more?
Yeah, Jerry.
Oh,
Good evening. My name is Sherry Pacetto. I didn't intend to speak tonight, but Father mentioned an older person who fell at the church. I don't think I'm the one he's speaking about, but I am an older person who fell on the south side of the church because the lights were so dark. And I chastised him and told him he better get them fixed. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
thank you. Are there any other audience members who wish to speak? Okay, if there are not, if there's anything you feel you need to rebut, you have 10 minutes to rebut.
Thank you. I'll make it brief. We feel like we've addressed all the issues that have come to light since we started our application with the city, and hope you find that acceptable. The deal with the height of the lights with parking lot lighting, there's kind of a sweet spot on height and quantity. If you go to, well, I live in Coos Bay, and like over at the Bimart Shopping Center, those lights are 50, 60 feet tall because they trying to minimize the amount of lights. And so if we reduce the height, if you get a chance to look at our photometrics, you'll see that even on the site, we got some dim areas. And so when we reduce the lights pole, then those dim areas will be even dimmer, if not zero. So then we add more lights. So it's kind of a balancing act. I never thought it never crossed my mind that those lights were exceedingly tall on site, but that's just my opinion. But the shorter we get, the more we're going to need. So we feel like replacing the heads of the lights to avoid bleed off into the adjacent properties, moving the south pole north to make sure there's no bleed off, will go a long ways to improving it. And I thought we were going to move those globes inside the site so nobody would even see them, except if we came up to the parking lot. Church sounds like they're going to get rid of them altogether. So it seems like we've hit the lighting pretty well. There is a component on those lights where you can have them half throttle, if you will, 50% with a motion light that will bump them up. And I noticed that Dana put that in one of the conditions related to lighting on condition 4. She listed a few things that you all could impose, and that's definitely a possibility. We don't want to put them on motion sensors so they're off. The church made it pretty clear they need to have some lighting on site, but we could do the throttle down methodology on those light fixtures. So anyway, I hope you guys find this favorable. Any more questions on lighting?
Have you done any projects involving that had lighting in a municipality, a night sky municipality?
Yeah, I've dealt with night sky requirements all the time. And these lights, they don't say night sky on them. The city of Bandon doesn't have that night sky.
Right.
But these, if you look at that illustration, that fixture that I showed you, it would comply with that. And it's all the lights down.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I was just curious as to whether or not you've ever discussed having, like you said, the half throttle at a certain time, like that would be.
well, they're on motion. So if when the photo cell kicks them on, they would be they'd be 50%. And then if there was some activity, motion on this, then they would throttle up to 100.
Okay.
So they would always be.
They'd always be on
They'd always be on and dim,
and dim, and then
Okay.
when there's activity on site, they would pump up.
and that's not the way they are right now. They're bright all the time.
The photometrics that you have are full power.
Right.
Yeah,
So maybe.
but again, it's 0 off the property, so we've complied with that component of the code.
I do understand neighbors' concern about that though, because I
Yeah.
have someone behind me that has their floodlights blaring into my property.
I'm a little bit reluctant to mention it just because maybe that's more annoying them going on, 50%, 100% than just being, I don't really know, but that's not a problem for us to do that.
I would suggest that if that would be something that you should seriously consider doing.
Yeah,
now.
if the commission wants to have that as part of that condition, that would
Right.
be fine.
I just have a quick question. So I'm not a lighting engineer, but basically, if you have a 20-foot light and it's directed so that the light is in a specific area, downward and not outward, and you're a neighbor, that light is not going to be shining into your neighbor. But if the neighbor looks out and up, they would see it. Is that a correct summation of?
Yeah, that photo I had in the slideshow, I mean, there's no way you can,
There's no, unless you had no light,
unless you have a ton of lights. But then that's an issue too.
right? Exactly. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Thank you.
Another question. You said that lights come on and they're throttled down. Are they in series or are they parallel? Do they all come on when there's activity, or does just the light that's affected by the activity come on?
The church made it clear that they would all be on. They didn't want to have them off at night, but they would be at 50%. Oh, you mean if that north light, somebody moves, then they all ramp up?
That's correct.
I don't know. I
Well,
could do that if you wanted.
That would probably be a better solution than having them all come up when there's activity in the parking lot versus just one coming on that's being affected by that movement.
Just so I'm clear, you mean if I walk by that north light, it ramps up, but not the others?
That's correct.
Yeah, that's probably easier to do than putting them all on series or parallel. I'm not an electrician.
Series. Okay, any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Planning.
All right, well, in your public testimony, you did receive a request to keep the record open. So we think, I might ask Shayla to hop in here, but I think this is where either you would continue the hearing to July 25th to allow for someone to respond to the new evidence, or we would follow the 777 rule where you just keep the record open. And as a reminder, that would be, well, so the first 7 is that folks can submit additional evidence or respond to evidence that was just submitted today. Then the second 7 is folks get to respond to that new evidence. And then the third 7 is that the applicant responds to all the new evidence into the record.
Does the 777 require another public hearing?
Well, it's still required that you come back and make a decision. You won't be making a decision tonight.
No, I realize that.
Yeah.
But there would not be public testimony at that hearing. It would just be for deliberation and decision by the commission.
Of stuff that was submitted during that 7 days.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay.
And let's go over again, please, what new evidence or what new
Just
information came in?
Oh, so when there's a request from someone in the public to keep the record open, I
You're
believe,
statutory required to keep it open for at least 7 days when that request is made. And then there's a 7-day series that allows the applicant, essentially the last call after the record is closed, to submit any sort of rebuttal testimony they would like to, that based upon what comes in.
So we're obligated to keep
Yes.
Yeah.
either
Yeah.
7 days
or just
carry
continue
it
the,
forward.
that's right.
Correct.
Okay.
Can we have a motion? I believe,
Do they need to make a motion?
They would need to make a motion
Okay.
whether they're
Yeah.
going to continue the hearing or keep
leave
the
the
record
record
open.
Keep the
Okay,
record open.
thanks.
I personally, I would like to see, keep the record open.
I'll so move that we just keep the record open for the 777.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Tom seconds. We'll have a vote. Tom?
Oh, I can do it. Sorry. Commissioner Orsi,
Aye.
Commissioner Scobie,
Oh, sorry.
Vice Chair Jerkowski. Aye. Chair Slothauer.
I don't vote until.
Oh, Commissioner Norman,
No.
Commissioner Frey,
Yes.
Commissioner Starbuck,
Yes.
and then Chair Slothauer. I
Well,
think you still vote.
I'm not supposed to vote.
Oh, never mind. Okay.
And
oh,
the only
never mind.
time I'm supposed to vote is if there's a tie.
Tiebreaker. Okay. So I will post just for clarity, because every time this happens, I have to also remind myself what the deadlines are. I will post on the city's website what the timelines are for when everyone can apply. Please look at the project page for more information or call the planning department. Is that good? Yep. Okay.
Okay. We,
So, and just to clarify then, the decision will be made on July 25th. It won't be a public hearing. You'll just be deliberating
Right.
towards a decision based on any new information that's submitted into the record.
right,
But the public's invited to attend the meeting.
Absolutely.
As
of
always.
course, of
Absolutely.
course, it's a public meeting.
It's a public meeting.
Okay,
Oh, sorry, uneventful ending there.
so the next thing on our agenda is the host compliance program tour.
Probably ought to close the hearing, don't you think?
Oh, I am sorry.
I don't think they close.
Oh,
They close
The,
the,
the public hearing needs to be closed.
okay,
Yes, you're
close
right.
the public hearing.
I was thinking we were leaving it open, but we're
We're
not.
just leaving the record
We're
open.
leaving the record open. Okay. This public hearing is closed at
8:26.
8:25. According to my computer, 8:25 PM on June 27th. Host compliance tour. We're going on a tour.
Does that happen before the staff report?
What, her comment?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I guess so. Okay.
yeah, she submitted this if you wanted to. Yeah.
I don't
Yeah,
think we
plenty
have
of
any.
time.
Well, we can't do it.
He needs to do it on the computer.
Yeah.
It was just on the agenda.
We have, if you ever need to have a special thing you can put in your ear, so you can hear it all. Yeah, we just keep them right over there by the phone. Talk to June about it. Oh, yeah.
Say Dana. Oh, excuse me.
You don't want them to leave.
We don't care.
Not sure.
Dana, would you like to lead us in the host compliance tour? You can be our tour guide.
I would, Nikki or Kaden, could you put the presentation up on the screen? So as a reminder, this was a request from the Planning Commission to sort of better understand the program we've been using for vacation rental dwelling compliance review. So so the program we use uses some like proprietary I don't know how to say it, technology to determine where these are. I didn't want to show you the whole thing because that would sort of let everyone know how we find out that they have illegal vacation rentals. So I have just taken some screenshots and sort of blacked out anything that could help that happen. So anyway, next slide. So host compliance is a product of Granicus, which is a technology company that sort of specializes in government. They offer products like website building and other sort of tracking. I believe they have something for transient occupancy taxes, other payments of other taxes, business licenses, that sort of thing. And they have one tool that's called Host Compliance that's specifically focused on vacation rental dwellings. So they monitor any short-term rental listing. And the map that I have up here is the map that we see on our home screen. I zoomed out so you hopefully can't tell exactly where those dots are, but the green ones are all of the compliant and approved vacation rentals. The blue ones are they sort of look like short-term rentals on a website, but they're actually just motel bookings. So what we're seeing a lot now is motels will list individual rooms on something like Airbnb or VRBO, but it's technically still a motel. It's not a short-term rental. The yellow, orange triangles are locations where they're still unsure. So they've sort of identified something that may be an illegal short-term rental or a legal short-term rental or a motel, but they haven't identified the address yet using their technology to figure out where it's actually located. And then finally, the red ones are non-compliant. It does look like there's an awful lot of non-compliant properties up there. I will say we did send out some letters today, so some of those are truly non-compliant. Some of them are that we just submitted an updated spreadsheet of all of our vacation rentals, so some just haven't been updated yet. Could you close the door?
I have a quick question.
Yes.
How come that little piece on the right side there is black? What does that mean?
Black. Oh, that's your property.
That's
there.
my house.
Okay. Moving on.
But why is it black?
Because it's just the outline.
Oh, it's just thick.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So next slide. So these are also on that home screen. We have a whole bunch of different things that we can see. Again, some of these numbers seem to me a little skewed based on the fact that it just hasn't updated yet. But so the program has identified 81 short-term rentals. We have 60 approved short-term rentals, so there are 21 that are sort of unaccounted for. Some of those are also those 30-day rentals, so they appear non-compliant until they list that I'm just a 30-day rental. You can see the other numbers, the 325 and the 222. Those are those big numbers because every individual motel room is now listed as a short-term rental. So again, they're not actual short-term rentals. The information is kind of skewed there. And then you can also see the percentage on the top, 82.7% are the units with street addresses identified. There are a number where they haven't identified them yet. We have the option as staff to also go into those unidentified locations and put the address if we know where it is. It still takes some time for their program to catch up to that. And then I also included the graph on the bottom here, which shows the minimum number of night stays. So primarily people, like our short-term rentals, people are staying 1 to 7 nights, but there is right here, that blip where it does show the 30+ nights. So those are all the short-term rentals that are actually long-term rentals. And the only, I'm trying to think if there's any other information that I haven't provided to you tonight that I can see if this program provides. I thought these were sort of the most important. There is another kind of cool graph that shows over time how many short-term rental listings we have. And what's sort of interesting is there's a few and then it jumps up because they did a big, sort of crawl to find everything. But over time, over the last year, we've actually had fewer listings. So I do think that the program has been successful in that in the beginning, we did identify probably 5 to 10 locations, sent out letters and got them into compliance. So that's worked so far.
Dana, do I understand you correctly? I thought I heard you say that this program doesn't discriminate between short-term rentals and motel rooms.
It does and it doesn't. So it shows us the difference, right? That's that this number here, the 222 includes all of those motel and hotel rooms that people list on a short-term rental website. But they've been identified as, oh, they're not a short-term rental, they're a motel unit.
Okay.
Because some places have like individual names for each room in their boutique motel that they list separately. So it sort of looks like a short-term rental and it's on the website as a short-term rental, but it's actually part of an approved commercial use. And then the 325 is both short and long-term rentals. So it's also identifying all of those 30+ days or anything on those websites that is, really meant for long-term renting. Because I believe this program crawls through like over 50 websites. So not all of them are just specific to short-term rentals like Airbnb or VRBO. Some of them have just all rentals abandoned. Okay, next slide. This one is, we have the ability to see information about each unit. I included this because It does, so we submit a massive Excel spreadsheet that has all of the information related to the specific short-term rental, including who the contact person is. That's how our compliant or the hotline works. It also lists their max sleeping capacity. So if they do end up listing, that they want to host 11 people and their max sleeping capacity is 10, that's something that we can actually review. It also, in this dashboard, we can see if there's one property that has more complaints than others. So that has been helpful. And then we can also see if we've actually contacted them before or not, if they've come into compliance or not. And then again, it's all linked to the registration number, which is just our planning action number, which is the same for both the planning department and the finance department to help them track. This page also allows us to sort by different things, so we can actually find out like how many rental units have are at like max sleeping capacity, or how many have complaints, or how we can search by lots of different things. So if there's information that you want to know about vacation rentals, we can get that for you. So the next slide, this is the template compliance letter. So we actually have the ability, if we do have one of those red triangles, we look at it, or red squares, I think. We look at it and we say, yeah, that's definitely not in the zone, definitely doesn't have a permit, definitely not doing long-term renting. We can actually just click a button that says send letter, and it sends this exact letter. The letter just says, you may have an illegal vacation rental. You need to contact the city within 10 days. Take your listing down. Usually that works. I mean, we've had a bunch of people come in and they immediately apologize and say, I'm so sorry, I didn't know this was happening. I found it to be really successful. We've only had one incident so far where we actually had to take it as far as like a municipal code violation. Most people are willing to and understanding.
How many people have come in yelling at you?
No one.
Very good.
I don't think anyone has come. I think most people really genuinely do not know the rules when they list these things. So most people are very apologetic. I would say the one sort of limitation of this, and I am contemplating actually getting rid of this function of the program because it's sort of a suite of services. This one is about $4,000, and I think probably we haven't sent out enough letters to make it worth it. Also, once you send out a letter, if they don't comply, you can't send out another letter. It only allows you to send it once. So if we had an example of, we sent out a letter last year, the person complied. Now this year, they're not complying anymore, but we can't send them another letter from the website. We actually have to do it from here. So it's only so useful. I would say this one, only so useful. And then finally, the other component that we have is the 24/7 hotline, which I think is so worth it. This component is only $2,000. Since we implemented the hotline last year in February, which was a very soft opening, we have received 43 calls. Most of those have been about parking and trash, and most are resolved, I think, within the day. We get notified of if the issue was resolved. Oftentimes when it's parking, someone's just going out and then moving the car. Trash seems to be a little bit more challenging. We've got some folks who are sort of chronic offenders with trash that we're still figuring out how to approach that and get them into compliance. So working on that. But that is pretty much the website. But I know I just sort of shared an overview, so I wanted to know if you had any questions or any other information we can provide to you about vacation rentals.
I know that it's expensive. Is the cost worth what it does?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think in total, the program costs about $15,000 a year. The biggest component of it is the constant crawling to find new vacation rentals. Prior to having this program, the alternative was that planning staff would spend a couple hours a month looking through Airbnb and trying to figure out which ones are new. We had also signed up there was a website that sort of did something similar and would send you a notification of any new short-term rental. But clearly we missed a lot. And so I think this just really helps. I think that component really helps us minimize the amount of time that we're spending on short-term rental compliance in terms of like illegal short-term rentals operating. I think also the host compliance or the 24/7 hotline function, from what I've heard from both the VRD owners or operators, they're really grateful to have that because I think most responsible people want to know when someone who's renting their property is violating the conditions, right? And so we've heard from at least property managers that they like the opportunity to deal with the problem before it becomes a sort of explosive issue. They get notified immediately. I would be curious to talk to community members if they have also felt like the hotline is effective or not. I don't know. So that's something we could find out.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I feel like it was a good tour.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Did we have a component on there to tell us whether or not, or is it just the finance department that gives the information and whether or not they rented it out for the minimum of 10 days?
So this program, as far as I know, is unable to get us the specific number of nights it was rented. What it does, I could have pulled one of those. I can pull a screenshot of that next time. So on the actual, so each short-term rental has its own page with all of the information listed. On the side, there is a component where it shows, it takes periodic screenshots of all of like the Airbnb postings, and lets us know if they post their listing or they take it down. It also lets us know when there's a documented stay, but what it doesn't tell us is how many days that stay was for. So it's really only so useful, or really not so useful for what the finance department needs to be tracking. It tracks, so you could have one documented stay and that stay could be 20 days, but we don't know. We just know somebody stayed there. So
Well,
that part.
since we have that as one of the conditions, I'm just wondering how that's. Really.
Yeah, so the finance department on their TOT reporting form, there used to be a line where you said how many nights in the calendar quarter you had rented. Somehow that line got deleted in some iteration or update of that form. So they are adding that back for the next calendar quarter.
Okay, thank you.
And I believe they're also going to start doing the auditing or monitoring. It is something in our code that says that vacation rental owners have to, or anyone who is submitting TOT receipts has to keep their books sort of handy. I think it's for 3 years. Bill might know more than me. I think you're an expert on that one. And so the finance department can actually do an audit of those books to make sure that they have paid. So that's something that they should be keeping track of, right? Is how many nights they're renting. So that's something that they're looking at implementing, but it does take staff capacity, which they have not had during the budget season. So we are hoping they'll do that soon.
Okay, like I said, as long as we have that as one of the conditions, we really.
Yeah.
I feel like we have the responsibility to make sure that we're following through.
Absolutely. I agree.
Thank you.
Okay.
That was helpful information.
Good. I'm glad.
How many VRD applications are in the pipeline?
I think 0.
I haven't heard of any.
Yeah, I think there may be one, so we usually have an idea of if they're coming or not based on when houses go on the market. Pretty much immediately, we get requests to do saturation studies for them. We use our GIS program. We charge $25 to do that study. And I usually know as soon as one comes back that it is potentially eligible, that someone will be buying it and applying. And we did have one, but I can't remember the address.
Okay. How long
So
does it take to do a saturation study?
Not very long. Fortunately, we use a GIS program where the map is already set up. So all I have to do is just create that buffer and determine how many houses are single family dwellings, half hour.
Half hour, and who
Yeah.
sets the fee at $25, which is inordinately low, I believe?
That very well could be true. We, the planning department set that fee a number of years ago. And the reason we did it at $25 at the time was because we didn't have a lot of information out there. That saturation rate can be really challenging to figure out if you don't have the information you need to do the calculation in the first place. And so because we had the GIS program, wanted to offer that as an opportunity to make sure that people knew before they purchased a house, they had some certainty as to whether or not it could be that. We could look at raising that, because I think we set that fee in like 2020, so it's been a while.
Think about a couple $100.
I think we should look into that.
Okay, I think we're going to do a planning fee update, so that's a good, I will put that on my list of VRD.
Just imagine what it would be like if we had a 3-year delay when somebody bought a property.
I was just gonna
before they-
ask about.
Before they could make it a VRD.
Yeah.
Is there anything happening with that idea?
So I mean, I think I said last time that we really wanted to have another joint meeting with the city council and the planning commission, because the planning commission can't take action unless the city council directs them to.
Right, right.
Because we have a lot going on this summer, we can't schedule a meeting in the summer, but I am hoping like September or October, we'll be able to have another joint session.
Of this year?
Yes,
Oh, good.
yes, we've just got things on the agenda already, so for the other meetings.
Okay, so great.
Okay, planning commission report.
All
I
right.
mean, not commission, planning department.
Yeah, I know. I was trying to find it in this long list of things here. I'm not sure where it is, but I'm sure I can speak extemporaneously about it. So the big thing is that this week we were really excited. We did interviews with candidates for the Rare AmeriCorps program. That is the program called Resource Assistance for Rural Environments. It's based at the University of Oregon. And what they do is they place a lot of times it's new grads, but it's really anyone who's interested in serving rural Oregon. So they place them in rural communities that have a need for capacity building. We applied and the work program that we selected includes the Architectural Review Overlay Zone, which was a council-directed project. Also, an update to the city's citizen involvement program. How we've sort of described that project is that the existing citizen involvement program, which we'll talk about in just a little bit, is a little bit outdated. It says it's the way that it's written is meant to be, how is the city going to have good two-way communication with our community members? Some of those things, the example I give is it says we post things in the newspaper, but we don't even have a local newspaper anymore. So I think there are probably more effective and successful ways that we can be communicating with folks about land use actions or just land use in general. So what the person will be doing is sort of, I call it the process is the plan. They will be doing some experimentation and trying to determine how our community wants to be communicated with. So they may be doing things like surveys, like focus groups, like a town hall meeting. We're throwing around the idea of the planners pub, where it's sort of the informal, come out to a business in Old Town and hear about what's going on in the planning department. So it'd be really exciting to see what some young enthusiastic person takes on, but we really hope to revamp that and sort of modernize it. I think also people are using social media more, and our citizen involvement program does not address social media at all. So that is exciting. And then I think they'll also be working on just getting to know the planning department, how to process applications. We hope to have them do some economic development work. So we will keep you in the loop. We interviewed 4 great candidates. And then the next part of the process is we rank our 4 people that we interviewed 1 through 4. And then they've also interviewed with about 4 different communities and they rank them. And then there's a matching program to try to get you somebody who wants to be in your community. They will be here from September through July. So we will have some added capacity then, which is why I'm sort of punting on anything additional until we've got some more folks in the office.
Where do they live?
They will have to find housing, and that is usually the most challenging part. But I was a Rare when I came here, so I know that there is hope that they will find something. I lived in 3 different places during my short
You're
year.
still a rare one, Dana.
I'm
Yeah, but is she still young and enthusiastic?
definitely not. That's what I said. I was like, I'm dead inside, so somebody help because I can't do it anymore.
I have a question. Do our allies at the Port of Bandon still have temporary housing that could be utilized for a project like this?
That's a good question. I can ask them about that. Actually, yeah, when I did Rare, the port put me up in housing. So
I'm sure Don would speak in our behalf.
yeah, there you go. I don't know if they're doing that anymore, though.
I couldn't hear you.
No comment, right? Okay, well, I don't know. I'm so struggling to find out where my the rest of it is. If anyone has any questions about what I put in there, let me know.
I believe it's on the the stuff
Oh.
you sent out.
I think I just found it. Well, it's sandwiched between the old stuff and the new stuff. Okay,
Uh,
here we go.
Dana, a comment, you're talking about not having a newspaper.
Yeah.
We do have a monthly blurb that goes out under the city manager and the utility bill.
Yes. And we have been trying to utilize that a little bit more. So the city manager's newsletter, I think I hear from a lot of people that everybody reads it, which
Oh,
is
yeah.
great. And it goes out also with the online subscribers. I think recently there's been so much information that we are overflowing and trying to cut things out of the newsletter. So maybe it needs to be 2 pages, but our utility staff, I think, would kill me if I recommended that.
There's also the abandoned section in the Friday World as well.
Yes, there is. And I think the coffee break could be utilized. I think people are still reading that. So there's definitely options. I think, and I think maybe we can come to you when they first arrive and you can give them some suggestions about how they might engage.
The other thing I might suggest, I think tonight was a missed opportunity. We had a sizable contingent here for a public hearing. And they weren't invited to stay. And I think they should have been.
What do you mean invite? Of course they know they can stay.
They weren't invited to stay.
They weren't invited.
They were not invited. And seems to me that ought to be kind of standard practice for our attempts to implement greater citizen involvement.
I did not I did not realize they needed an actual invitation.
People do.
The onus is not on you there necessarily. This is not a,
No, but I'm just saying that it never occurred to me
Yeah.
that,
will occur to you.
Well, it's a social thing. If somebody starts leaving, they all start leaving.
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, one of them came back.
Right.
So
yeah.
we have one boomerang.
Maybe we could lock the door.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good idea.
So is
Okay,
that it?
I did just have one other thing on here. I wanted to let you know, I think I may have mentioned it last time. We were finally successful in getting the funding for a housing code update. Nikki and I met with the folks at Cascadia Partners, which is the consulting firm that's going to be doing the work for us. We had an hour-long call where we essentially rattled off everything that's wrong with our code related to housing. And so now they will actually go to DLCD and ask for money to make that happen. They may not be able to do it all, but we are really excited about that project. The other thing to point out is that Gravel Point update. So I think the last time we talked, there was an objection to the record at Luba. We amended that record. They did accept that record. I don't know why, and maybe Shayla knows, but after they accept the record, it's 77 days before
Jesus.
they have a final order. So I believe right now we're the respondent, and then no, the other one, the intervener. The interveners are preparing a response, or no? Shayla will talk. I'm not good at this part.
The appellant files their brief
Oh,
first.
that's it. Okay.
And then the intervener has a time period in which to respond. And the 77 days that's how long it takes to get through the process. And that's the deadline Luba has to make their decision.
Got it.
So we should have something back in that time frame.
When is 77 days?
It starts when the record was completed,
Yeah.
which was the 13th, July 13th.
I can,
June 13th.
June
June
13th,
13th,
so
yeah.
it's the end of August. We'll know by the end of August. I think it was August 29th is the 77 days. So just to clarify, we will receive the copy from the appellant about what they're actually arguing.
Correct. And then
Okay.
we will receive the intervener's response to that.
Got it. Okay,
Thank you.
so we will continue to keep you updated on that exciting situation. And I think that's all I have on that one. Any questions?
All right, any commissioner comments?
I wanted to, does it have to do
Bring the
anything to
microphone.
do with, okay. It can have anything to do with anything in the city.
Oh,
Right?
If you got a comment, make it.
I do. I was very happy to see that they finally have crosswalk signs on 11th Street between the youth center and the elementary school. I'm not saying people honor them all the time, but at least they have crosswalk signs for the children. So thank you.
well, it has to do with the city. Kind of.
That is the city.
I said, can it have something to do, anything with the city?
Anybody else?
Yes, who's our, do we have a new employee or a temporary? Yeah.
Who is this person over here?
Who is
I
this
was-
person over?
I know, who's this random
I
person?
think he's male, not sure. We don't see.
Yeah, unsure.
Oh,
This is,
Gord.
this is Caden Contreras. This is Tori's son, who's actually
Hi.
just been volunteering with us over the last week or so. Will be here next week. He is embarking on an internship elsewhere, but he is, well, I'm probably giving your introduction, but he's going to school and interested in doing something in local government planning, affordable housing. And so he's been assisting us immensely in creating some posters for us and doing website work and GIS. So we've been really grateful to have him just for a couple weeks.
Thank you.
Great,
Where
thank
are you
you.
going to school?
You know, yeah.
And he's got an internship with the city of Anaheim coming up, so.
I know.
Anybody else?
Tomorrow, the tribe is having a remembrance celebration
Where?
and down at the fish market.
Yeah, okay.
And about noon, gonna be food.
Thank you.
Are there gonna be door prizes?
I don't know what kind of prizes you would want.
Come and see.
Okay, we are going to call this adjourn this meeting and at about 8:56.
And then
And
we're
now
adjourning. Yeah, perfect. Good.
we adjourn for a committee on citizen involvement. And I was been reading this stuff and I have a couple of questions.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just, if I can really quickly.
Okay.
I just wanted to say, I sent you the video and I realized afterwards, Tom, what you were referring to as a very long video. I thought I told you to only watch that short part. If you watch, okay, good. I was like, if you watched the whole meeting, that was like a day-long meeting. But I did send you a video that was specific to goal 1 of the Oregon Land Use Program. The presentation was by Sadie Carney, who works for the Department of Land Conservation and Development. I thought she just did a really good job of sort of summarizing what is or is not the role of a CCI. As a reminder, the Planning Commission is now operating as the CCI, and your role, again, I printed this for you this time. This is the ordinance that describes what is the CCI. And so your role is to ensure that people have the opportunity and that the city is doing a good job of getting people to understand and participate in land use in Bandon. So it is land use in particular. I think land use can be a lot of things, but the idea is mostly the things that we're doing in the planning department. What it isn't, and I think Sadie went over this, is that we're not talking about specific projects. So the CCI would never really get involved in Gravel Point. It would get involved in the bigger discussion of, what should Bandon look like? Should we allow hotels on in the CD1 zone? So it's sort of the big picture and how can, if the Planning Commission is sort of contemplating big decisions like that would affect a lot of people, how do we make sure that people know what's happening and have the opportunity to participate? So I just wanted to sort of share that first.
Okay, well, I didn't see the video. I didn't see it. I never saw it show up.
I can
But-
send it to you again.
But it probably did. I missed things.
Something like that, yeah.
Okay, yeah. One thing that I was wondering though is that it talks about, establishing communication with the citizens and people being able to get involved. But if there are things that the planning commission is considering and people want to talk to us about it, isn't that ex parte communication?
Well, that's what I said. It's not specific land use applications. That's not what the CCI is for. It's just how are people communicating with the city about land use in general? So it's all the rules about ex parte contact still apply. You wouldn't talk to somebody about a specific land use application, but you would want to make sure that they knew where the meeting was and that they knew how to talk to a planning commissioner if they had a concern. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
No?
Okay, but it's not about, so on a quasi judicial decision, that's where ex parte contact happens, right? So we're not talking about any of those, but the, like when you did the, heavy industrial zone, that's not quasi judicial, that's legislative. So there's no ex parte contact there. You
Oh,
can
okay.
tell people you should attend this meeting. It could affect you.
Right.
Okay, that makes sense now.
But in general, it's more about how we are communicating and less about what we are not about the actual action itself, just wanting people to understand how the city communicates with them about land use.
And not to belabor the point, but
No, this is
I
good.
think when we have a room full of citizens, we need to take advantage of that opportunity
And lock the doors.
and lock the damn
Yeah.
doors. That's right.
I
And-
think that's kidnapping, but just saying.
And I also want to point out, everybody knows the definition of land use. It's whatever I think should happen to the land.
That's
Right?
right. That's right.
Oh, no,
Yeah, which is why I say it's not specific, but it's more just broad about how do we get people sort of excited about what you're doing? I think that what the planning commission does is incredibly interesting and really important to people's lives. And often they're not getting involved until quote unquote, it's too late. Like I do think of the Gravel Point project as being the time to get involved was when we were making decisions about what the CD1 zone looks like and how, that sort of thing, not the specific application itself. So. And
That's true of a lot of the issues.
That is true. Yeah.
That's right.
Mhm.
So do you have family or friends visiting you this summer?
Yes, I have some grandchildren.
What's that?
I have some grandchildren who are gonna be playing at my arcade. Yeah.
Hey, invite them in next time. It's a July, what is it? July 20?
July 27th.
Yeah.
I love that.
Dana, while you're sending him the video, would you send it to me as?
Yeah,
well?
I'll just send the video out to everyone again. I was also going to ask, so when we had a standalone committee, we did make binders for everyone. If it would be helpful to have a binder, we are happy to put those together for you. We also put together for them, this was a document created by DLCD. I think it's a pretty good one. It's lots of pictures and big words, so it's not too much reading. And it's called Putting the People in Planning. Or sorry, large font. Lots of large font.
No big words.
See, look, lots of nice pictures,
Yeah.
but makes you feel good.
It came with a set of crayons, so you.
Oh, good. And nothing more than 2 syllables, right?
Yes,
No
nothing
coloring book style. Okay.
Yeah.
exactly, but it is I think it's a really good guide, just to figure out, or to learn about different ways that you might get involved or get people involved in the program. So
That sounds good.
we will,
Actually, yeah, I would like to. See.
okay, we will do that. That way you can kind of keep it separate from everything else.
But I just soon not have a binder.
You don't have to have a binder. I'm happy to I can send an email with that video and then a digital copy of this guidebook. And then if you want to respond to that and say, I want a binder or I want paper copies, we're happy to make that for you. And then, so one of the things on the list of things the CCI does is that you're supposed to make an annual written report to the city council that assesses the effectiveness and overall implementation of the citizen involvement program. I thought that might be a good place to start. I know maybe it seems backwards because we're not super aware of what's in here, but I think we all know how people are being communicated with and what works and what doesn't. So at the next meeting, I would propose having a sort of brainstorming session.
idea.
And then maybe someone will take the lead, or I am happy to take the lead on writing a letter to the city council, letting them know this is what we'd like to do. And then when we get that RARE on board, they can take your feedback and then start figuring out how to improve it.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Speaking of citizen involvement, I've had a couple of people ask me is there an anticipated return date for the Parks and Rec Commission to begin meeting again?
There is not. So they're still on hiatus. I think what we've talked about internally is that until there is a department to staff them, we really don't have the resources to keep a commission like that going, especially because they oftentimes they don't have a budget, so they don't have that much to do, and it is a lot of work for staff to staff those meetings. So they're still on hiatus until we figure out a different plan.
Maybe we could absorb them into the planning commission.
Yeah.
I think that's very
Give me
possible.
Another chair.
Yeah, we could absorb the city council.
Yeah, there you go, yeah.
All powerful over here, planning commission.
If someone needs to remove a tree, then they're just coming to you then? Is that the deal?
Well, so right now, we haven't gotten any requests for
Okay.
tree removals, but if we did, we've been talking about having the city council delegate authority to the planning commission potentially,
Okay.
to make those decisions on
To grab a
Yeah,
chainsaw.
I think I'm gonna go back to the whole, I had to have a tree removed from my road.
Yeah.
I don't think you should have to go to a committee and ask permission when the city's telling you you have to do it.
So we've clarified the process, I guess I should say. The tree subcommittee did a ton of work in redoing the tree permit. And so if the city deems something to be a hazard tree or says the tree needs to be removed because of utilities or some other conflict, the Public Works Department can sign off on that without it going to a committee.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, and then
It was kind of a waste of time for me.
yeah, then the committee gets notified that it was removed, but they're only making decisions on trees that are not considered hazard trees normally. So it's if you want the tree to be removed and there's maybe some hazard, but it isn't immediate to life or property or city utility, then it goes for consideration.
Well,
before the
that's,
committee.
no, it really is good. It was more or less, they didn't want the tree roots to destroy the road that I had to
Yeah.
pay for.
So now under this process, Public Works would just sign off on that.
That's good.
Yeah,
I'm glad to hear that.
but thank you for asking. It's a good question.
Okay. I think we're done.
There's one other item on here, which is the upcoming.
Matlock reruns,
Oh my
okay?
gosh, well, I'll keep it short. There is, the planning department is hosting a movie night at the Sprague Theater. It is called An Oregon Story, Saving Our Beaches, Farmland and More. It is a wonderful documentary of the origin of the Oregon Land Use Program. And I just wanted to let you know that we scheduled it for July 24th, which is the night before your planning commission meeting. Doors open at 6. The movie showing is at 6:30. I believe the movie's about 80 minutes long.
I've seen it and it's really good.
It's really good. And then we will also be doing a sort of precursor to your, maybe we'll use that information at your discussion at the CCI. But we will be doing an activity in the lobby, asking people some questions about what they want to see Bandon look like in the future. Sort of replicating what staff members did at the beginning of the Oregon Land Use Program when they were determining what should the Oregon Land Use Program be? What do we want to protect and save? So we're looking forward to it and we hope that you consider attending. And that's all I have.
And you'll lock the doors after.
Yes, you will be trapped.
Again, kidnapping, but you know.
No, involuntary imprisonment.
Yeah. But now
What's the difference?
It's only for, an hour and a half, 2 hours. Okay, does that mean we're finished?
Thank you all.
You can
Yes,
get back
we
to
got it.
Matlock. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
I don't need this, but we'll go. So everybody's aware that we're done.
You're a powerful man.
Oh, come on, you know it's fun to do.
Story of your year.